Hello, my name is Elizabeth, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood on the outskirts of Seattle. I'm in my early 60s, and I've always been a fan of stories like these, often tuning in for the relatable and emotional tales they tell. Today, I'm sharing a story that's close to my heart. It's about my only son and our journey together, filled with ups and downs, and a shocking twist at the end. Stick with me until the very end for the full impact. Let me start by asking, how many of you are still living with your spouse? If you are, you're truly blessed. I lost my husband when I was still in my 30s. We hadn't even been married for 10 years, and he passed away suddenly from a rare lung cancer. He had always been a strong and healthy man, never once falling sick with even a cold. But one day, it just struck him out of nowhere. My son was only 6 years old at the time, and from then on, I was left to care for him on my own. To support us, I had to work hard at anything that could make money, as long as it wasn't illegal. Since my son was still very young, I mainly focused on running a small business. I would wake up early every day, head to the local markets to buy discounted goods and sell them on the streets. In the summers, I would drag around a cooler, selling cold drinks and ice cream. During the winter, I sold hot foods like fish cakes and pancakes. The work was grueling, and I often had little time for myself, but I never once heard my son complain. He was always so responsible. He would make his own meals, wash the dishes, and even help with his homework while waiting for me to come back from work. He was such a good boy, always taking care of things around the house. "Mom, let me massage your shoulders," he'd say after a long day. "You've worked so hard. I can feel it all melting away when I rub your shoulders." I remember thinking, how sweet. He might be young, but he's so thoughtful. It wasn't just about the massages, though. My son, who was only 6, would often tell me, "Mom, I'm going to work hard when I grow up. I'll make enough money to take care of you so you don't have to work anymore." His words made my heart swell with pride, even though deep down I wished for him to have a more carefree childhood. I hoped he would ask for toys and fun outings like other kids, but he never did. Instead, he was always so focused on helping me. As time passed, I continued to work hard, and things began to improve a bit. By the time my son entered high school, he had developed a strong sense of responsibility, and I was able to expand my business. I started sourcing clothes from a wholesaler in the Dongdaemun district and selling them at my stall. As I got more experienced, I even began picking out items, displaying them on mannequins, and styling outfits. I had always loved fashion, and with my mom's influence, I had a keen eye for what was trendy. People started noticing, and before long, my business was booming. One day, a regular customer asked me, "Why are you still running your stall? There's a good location available at the intersection near the department store. You should open a real store there. I can see you making it big." At first, I hesitated. Opening a store meant a huge investment. Rent, utilities, all the expenses would add up quickly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it might be the opportunity I needed. My son was getting older, and I'd need to save up for his tuition fees and other costs. I decided to take the plunge. I signed the lease and opened my first clothing store, naming it after my son, hoping that it would bring good fortune, as some people believe in such superstitions. The shop did well right from the start. The word of mouth spread, and soon enough, people of all ages were coming in to buy my clothes. At that point, I was feeling confident. I could see how my hard work was paying off, and I dreamed of using my earnings to make my son's life easier. He had always promised me that once he had his own job, he'd take care of me. I held on to that promise, imagining the future, paying for his college, helping him buy a house when he got married. It was all within reach now. Then, something unexpected happened. My son graduated from a prestigious university, and before I knew it, he landed a good job at a major company. His first paycheck, he handed to me without hesitation. "Mom, this is my first paycheck. I want you to have it," he said. I was stunned. "Why, son? You need it more than I do." "No, Mom. After everything you've done for me, this is nothing. I want you to live well. I'm just getting started, but I'll take care of you from now on." His words brought tears to my eyes. I had lost my husband early, but seeing how well I had raised my son made it all worthwhile. Over time, he did take care of me. He replaced all the old furniture and appliances in my house. He took me out to nice restaurants and even took me on a vacation abroad. He truly became the perfect son. But of course, things didn't stay perfect forever. I began to notice small changes in him. He was coming home later and later, and when he did, he was always on the phone with someone. Eventually, it became clear to me. He had a girlfriend. He hadn't been interested in dating for a long time, so it was strange to see him so invested in someone. Still, as much as I was happy for him, I couldn't help but feel a little left out. Then came the day when he finally admitted it. "Mom, there's someone I'm serious about. I think we're going to get married soon," he told me, and I could sense a mix of joy and sadness within me. My son was becoming an adult, starting his own life, and soon enough, someone else would be the most important person in his world. I was a bit nervous when my son told me about her. He had kept their relationship private until he felt it was serious enough to share. "What's she like?" I asked. "Well, she's smart, kind, and we get along really well. She just joined the company recently. It's still new, but I think you'll like her," he said with a smile. When they finally came to the house together, I could see why he was so fond of her. Her name was Emily, and she had an air of confidence that didn't come off as arrogant. She greeted me politely, complimented the food I prepared, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. "Mrs. Morgan, you have an amazing way with cooking," she said after her first bite. "I'm usually not much of an eater, but I couldn't stop." "Please call me Elizabeth," I replied, though a part of me still felt guarded. As the evening went on, she told me about her background, her hobbies, and how much she appreciated my son. "He's always speaking so highly of you, Elizabeth. I can see where he gets his strength and kindness from." Despite my initial reservations, Emily seemed like a good match for my son. He looked happy, and that's all I ever wanted for him. But after they left, I couldn't shake a slight unease. Maybe it was just the adjustment period, the realization that our little family dynamic was changing. In the weeks that followed, my son and Emily grew closer. They began spending more weekends together, planning their future. One day, he told me, "Mom, we're thinking of getting married next year. I wanted to let you know before we start telling others." I took a deep breath. "You know what's best for you, son. If Emily makes you happy, then I'm happy too. Have you spoken with her family?" "Not yet," he said, "but I plan to soon. Emily wants you to be involved in the planning. She really looks up to you, you know." I nodded. "Well, let's make sure everything is done right. If there's anything you need, just let me know." Their wedding preparations went smoothly. Emily's family was warm and welcoming, and we all worked together to plan the ceremony. The wedding day itself was beautiful. Watching my son say his vows, I felt a mix of pride and melancholy. It was as if I were letting go of a piece of my own life, allowing him to fully step into his own. The ceremony was filled with smiles, tears of joy, and the beginning of a new chapter for them. In the early days of their marriage, they seemed blissfully happy. Emily would visit me often, sometimes bringing small gifts or asking for cooking advice. She called me Mom, which felt a bit strange at first, but I came to appreciate her effort to bond. On more than one occasion, she'd stay late after dinner, chatting with me about everything from work to her dreams of traveling someday. "You know," she once said, "I always wished I had a mother-in-law like you." At the time, her words made me smile. I thought we were building a relationship that would only grow stronger over the years. But over time, I began to notice subtle changes. Emily's visits became less frequent. When I would call, she often seemed distracted or preoccupied. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Elizabeth. I'm just swamped with work right now," she'd say. Then, there were times when she'd cancel plans at the last minute. "Something came up," she'd text. "Let's reschedule." I brushed it off at first. Newlyweds have busy lives after all. But when I stopped by their home unexpectedly one afternoon to drop off some food, Emily's reaction caught me off guard. Instead of her usual warm greeting, she looked surprised, almost irritated. "Oh, Elizabeth," she said, forcing a smile. "You didn't need to bring anything. I just thought you and Sam would like this soup. It's one of his favorites." Emily hesitated before taking the container. "Thanks," she said, "but we've been so busy lately I'm not sure when we'll get to it." "Is something wrong?" I asked gently. No, nothing's wrong, she said, but her tone wasn't convincing. As time went on, these moments began to add up. Emily became more distant, her warmth fading. I noticed Sam becoming quieter too, and when I'd ask him about it, he'd just shrug and say, "It's nothing, Mom. Work's been stressful for both of us." But something in his voice told me it was more than just work. I could see the tension between them growing. Emily started avoiding family gatherings, and Sam began coming home later than usual. When they were together, they seemed polite but distant, like two people sharing a space rather than a life. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong, but Sam insisted it was all fine. "Mom, we're just figuring things out," he'd say. "All couples go through this." Still, I couldn't help but worry. The happy, confident Emily I'd first met was now a shadow of her former self, and Sam seemed to carry a burden he wouldn't share. Whatever it was, it felt like the family I thought I had was slowly slipping away. Over time, my worries about their relationship deepened. I'd often find myself replaying moments in my head, trying to pinpoint where things had started to shift. One day, I decided to visit Sam at work. Maybe seeing him in his element would help me understand if something else, besides their marriage, was weighing him down. When I arrived, I was greeted warmly by his colleagues, but Sam seemed startled to see me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, his tone a bit rushed. "I just thought I'd stop by and say hello. You always seem so busy these days," I said with a soft smile. "I wanted to see how you're doing." He gestured toward a nearby office. "We can talk in here," he said, leading me to a small, quiet room. Once inside, he closed the door and turned to me. "Mom, everything's fine. You don't need to worry." I could see the fatigue in his eyes, the way his shoulders drooped. "I know you say that, Sam, but I can tell something's off. You don't seem like yourself lately." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just work. Deadlines, pressure, nothing more than that." I placed a hand on his arm. "You know you can always talk to me, right? About anything." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't ready to open up. "I appreciate it, Mom. Really. But it's just work stress. I'll be fine." I wanted to push further, to ask more questions, but I held back. Instead, I left with a heavy heart, still feeling that something deeper was going on. Weeks passed, and my contact with Emily grew even more infrequent. When I did see her, she seemed distant, her once cheerful demeanor replaced by a quiet, almost guarded presence. She no longer called me Mom or asked about my recipes. Instead, she spoke in short sentences, as if she couldn't wait for the conversation to end. One evening, I decided to invite them both over for dinner. I thought maybe if we all sat down together, we could reconnect and perhaps I'd get a clearer picture of what was happening. When I called Sam to invite them, he hesitated. "I'll talk to Emily and let you know," he said. That evening, Sam showed up alone. "Emily's not feeling well," he explained as he stepped inside. I tried to hide my disappointment. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope she feels better soon." "She'll be fine," he said quickly, sitting down at the table. As we ate, I noticed he wasn't as talkative as usual. He barely touched his food and kept checking his phone. "Is everything okay?" I asked cautiously. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind," he replied, but offered no further explanation. The dinner felt strained, and when he left, I couldn't help but feel that I'd missed an opportunity to get through to him. It was as if there was a wall between us now, one that hadn't been there before. Over the following months, the distance between them and me grew even larger. Sam and Emily stopped visiting altogether, and the phone calls became few and far between. When I tried reaching out, I was met with vague excuses or no response at all. I began to feel more isolated, as if I were no longer a part of their lives. Then one day, Sam called me out of the blue. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice heavy with something I couldn't quite place. "Of course, what's going on?" "Can I come by tonight?" "Sure," I replied, a mixture of relief and worry washing over me. It had been so long since we'd had a real conversation that I wasn't sure what to expect. When he arrived that evening, he looked different, more tired, more worn down. As we sat down, he took a deep breath. Mom, I wanted to tell you before you heard it from anyone else. Emily and I are getting a divorce. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. A divorce? I repeated, almost in disbelief. But why? What happened? He hesitated, looking down at his hands. We just couldn't make it work. We're not happy together anymore. I searched his face, trying to understand. Sam, is there something you're not telling me? He shook his head. It's just what I said. We're not right for each other. I'll be fine, Mom. I just wanted you to know. I felt a flood of emotions, sadness for him, confusion, and even a tinge of anger. You've been so distant lately, both of you. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't think it was this. I'm sorry, he said softly. I should have been more open with you. I just didn't want to burden you with our problems. You're my son, Sam. Your problems are my problems, I said, my voice breaking. I just want you to be happy. He looked at me with a weak smile. I will be, Mom. It's just going to take some time. I wanted to believe him, to trust that he'd find his way through this. But as he left that evening, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss. Not just for his marriage, but for the connection we'd once shared. Something had changed between us, and I wasn't sure how to get it back. In the weeks that followed, I struggled to wrap my mind around what had happened. I kept replaying conversations and events in my head, searching for signs that I might have missed. Sam assured me that it was a mutual decision, that they'd tried everything they could to salvage their relationship, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something he wasn't telling me. Emily, for her part, vanished from our lives almost overnight. She didn't reach out or return any of my calls. I didn't hear a single word from her, as if the bond we had started to build had never existed at all. It hurt more than I expected. I wasn't angry at her. I just wanted to understand. But as days turned into weeks and then months, I realized that closure might never come from her. I would have to accept that some questions would remain unanswered. Sam, on the other hand, threw himself into his work. He started spending long hours at the office, taking on extra projects and responsibilities. When I would call, he'd sound distracted. I'm fine, Mom, he'd insist. Just busy. Really, don't worry about me. But I was worried. He was eating less, sleeping less, and I could hear the strain in his voice. I'd suggest meeting up for lunch, and he'd say he didn't have time. I'd offer to bring him something to eat, and he'd tell me not to bother. I'm handling it, he'd say, but I wasn't convinced. Then one evening, I decided to drop by his apartment unannounced. I thought maybe if I could see him face to face, I'd have a better sense of how he was really doing. When I knocked on the door, there was no answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. My heart sank. I tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left that night feeling more helpless than ever. All I wanted was to be there for him, but he seemed to be pushing me away. It reminded me of the early days after his father passed, when he'd put on a brave face and tell me everything was fine, even when I knew it wasn't. Back then, I'd find him sitting quietly in his room, staring at old photos, his small hands clutching a toy truck his dad had given him. I remembered how I'd sit beside him, wrapping my arms around him, telling him it was okay to cry. Eventually he would, and though it broke my heart, I knew it was part of his healing. But now, he was an adult. I couldn't just walk into his room and hold him until he let it all out. He had his own walls, his own way of dealing with pain, and it felt like I was on the outside looking in. I started to wonder if my presence was doing more harm than good, if my constant worry was pushing him further away. A few more weeks passed without much contact. Then one day, out of the blue, I got a call from Sam's office. A colleague of his, a woman named Rachel, introduced herself and said she wanted to talk to me about Sam. He's been missing a lot of work lately, she explained. We're worried about him. I thanked her for letting me know and immediately tried calling Sam again. This time, he picked up. Mom, he said, his voice sounding hoarse. I'm fine. No, you're not, I said, my voice firm. I got a call from your office. They're concerned, and so am I. He sighed heavily on the other end. I've just been, I don't know, tired, I guess. Tired isn't skipping work, I said. Tired isn't shutting everyone out. Please, Sam, just let me help you. Let me be there for you. There was a long pause before he finally spoke. Okay, can I come over tomorrow? When he arrived, he looked even more exhausted than I'd imagined. Dark circles under his eyes, his hair unkempt, his posture slouched. I led him to the couch and sat beside him. Sam, what's really going on? I asked gently. He looked down at his hands, fiddling with a loose thread on his sleeve. I don't know how to explain it, Mom. I feel like I failed. My marriage didn't work out. I'm not sure where I'm headed anymore. I thought I had everything figured out, but now it feels like I'm just lost. My heart ached for him. Sam, you haven't failed. Life isn't a straight line. Sometimes we take detours, but that doesn't mean we won't find our way back. He nodded slowly, his eyes still downcast. I keep thinking about what Dad would have done. He always seemed to know the right answers. I wish I could ask him what to do. Tears welled up in my eyes. Your father was wonderful, but even he didn't have all the answers. He had his struggles too. He just didn't let you see them. And I'll tell you what he would say to you right now. Take one step at a time. Focus on what you can do today, not what went wrong yesterday. Sam finally looked up, his expression softening. Maybe you're right. I know I'm right, I said with a small smile. And you don't have to go through this alone. You've always been there for me, and I'll always be here for you. For the first time in what felt like ages, Sam leaned over and gave me a hug. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I could feel the tension in him begin to ease, if only slightly. From that point on, he started coming over more often, and gradually, he began to open up. He talked about the pressure he felt at work, the lingering doubts about the divorce, and his uncertainty about what came next. I didn't have all the answers, but I listened, and that seemed to be enough. Little by little, he seemed to be finding his way again. As I watched him take those small steps forward, I realized something important. While I couldn't fix everything for him, I could be a steady presence, a source of comfort and support. And sometimes, that was enough. As the months rolled by, Sam started showing signs of progress. He took things slow, but he began piecing his life back together. He found a new apartment, smaller and simpler than the one he had shared with Emily, but it was his own space, his sanctuary. He started cooking for himself again, something he hadn't done in a long time. He even picked up a new hobby, painting, and found a certain calm in putting brush to canvas after a long day. It wasn't just the physical changes that reassured me, though. Our conversations began to shift too. Instead of dodging my calls or speaking in half-hearted responses, Sam started opening up more. He shared his plans and dreams, even some of his fears. We started having dinners together regularly, where he'd tell me about a new project at work or something funny that happened in his painting class. It felt like he was coming back, not just to me, but to himself. Still, I noticed that certain topics remained off-limits. He didn't mention Emily, and he didn't bring up the divorce unless I gently prompted him. Even then, he'd keep his answers brief, as if he were still carrying a weight he wasn't quite ready to let go of. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of his new apartment, watching the sun set over the city, I decided to bring it up. Sam, I said carefully, I know you don't like talking about the past, but have you been able to find any peace with what happened? With Emily? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's complicated, Mom. I don't think I'll ever fully understand why things turned out the way they did. I've stopped looking for answers. I think I've made peace with the fact that sometimes people just grow apart. And that's okay. I nodded, trying not to press him further. It's okay not to have all the answers. What matters is that you're moving forward. He glanced over at me, a small smile tugging at his lips. Thanks, Mom. As much as I wanted to help him find closure, I knew that it was something he'd have to do on his own. I could only be there to support him as he navigated his way through the process. A few months later, Sam surprised me with some unexpected news. "Mom, I've been seeing someone," he said over dinner one night. The words caught me off guard, but I managed to keep my expression calm. "Oh," I said, setting down my fork. "Tell me about her." Her name was Laura. She was a graphic designer who shared his love of art and creativity. He described her as kind, funny, and understanding. "She knows what I've been through, and she's patient. I don't feel pressured to rush into anything. It's nice." I could see a spark in his eyes that hadn't been there in a long time. It wasn't the same overwhelming infatuation he'd had with Emily. It was steadier, more grounded. I smiled. "She sounds wonderful, Sam. I'm so glad you found someone who makes you happy." As he told me more about Laura, I realized that he'd grown a lot since his divorce. He was approaching this relationship with more thoughtfulness and self-awareness. He wasn't rushing into a fairy tale. He was building something real, brick by brick. A few weeks later, I met Laura for the first time. She came over for dinner, and I immediately felt at ease in her presence. She was warm, down to earth, and genuine. We talked about everything from her favorite movies to the silly quirks Sam had picked up since he started painting. I could see how much she cared for him, not just in her words, but in the way she looked at him, the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she reached for his hand when she thought no one was watching. After dinner, as Laura helped me clear the dishes, she said, "I just want you to know how much I admire Sam. He's been through a lot, and he's still one of the most kind-hearted people I've ever met. I think that's a testament to you, Elizabeth." Her words caught me off guard, but they warmed my heart. "Thank you, Laura. That means a lot. I can see he's happy with you, and that makes me happy too." As the night went on, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Sam was finding his way again, not because of someone else, but because he had taken the time to heal and grow. Laura was just the icing on the cake, a bright spot in his life that complemented the strength he'd rebuilt in himself. When they left that evening, I sat in the quiet of my home, reflecting on how far we had come. There had been moments when I doubted we'd ever reach this point. I had worried that the pain and confusion of the past would always linger, but here we were, both of us standing on firmer ground. Life didn't go back to the way it was before. There was no undoing the divorce, no erasing the pain that came with it. But we had found a new rhythm, a new way of being a family. And as I watched Sam grow into this new chapter of his life, I felt a deep sense of pride. Not because everything had turned out perfectly, but because he had faced his struggles head-on, learned from them, and come out stronger on the other side. Over the next year, I watched Sam's life unfold with a kind of quiet pride. He and Laura were taking things one step at a time. No rushing, no big announcements, just enjoying each other's company and finding joy in the simple things. They spent weekends exploring nearby hiking trails, trying new restaurants, and sometimes just sitting on the couch sketching together. Sam's painting hobby flourished. What started as a way to unwind turned into something he genuinely loved. He even entered a local art show, surprising himself when one of his pieces sold. "Mom," he said one evening after the show, "I don't think I'll ever be a full-time artist, but it feels good to know that something I made connected with someone else." "That's wonderful," I replied. "It doesn't have to be a career. Sometimes it's enough to have something that brings you peace." His relationship with Laura continued to deepen, and it was clear how happy she made him. But what touched me most was seeing how much more comfortable he was in his own skin. The Sam I saw now wasn't the same person who had sat across from me, shoulders slumped and voice heavy with self-doubt. This Sam was more sure of himself. He didn't have all the answers, but he had learned to embrace the unknown with a quiet confidence. He was building his own future, one day at a time. As for me, I found myself letting go of the need to protect him at every turn. I stopped worrying about whether he'd call every day or tell me everything that was on his mind. Instead, I focused on being present when he needed me, supporting him without hovering. Our relationship felt lighter, more balanced. And it wasn't just with Sam. I started picking up old hobbies of my own, like gardening and sewing, and even joined a local book club. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a life outside of worrying about my son. One afternoon, Sam and Laura came over with some big news. "Mom," Sam said, a broad grin on his face, "we're moving in together." The words took me by surprise, though they shouldn't have. They'd been spending so much time at each other's places that this seemed like a natural next step. "That's wonderful," I said, hugging them both. "When's the big move?" "Next month," Laura replied. "We found a place downtown. It's small but cozy and close to both our jobs." I could see the excitement in their eyes. They weren't just building a life together, they were building a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. It was a far cry from the rushed whirlwind romance Sam had with Emily. This time, it felt right. As they packed up Sam's apartment and prepared for their new home, I pitched in where I could. I helped with some light packing, brought them meals on busy days, and even sewed a set of curtains for their new living room. I wasn't doing it out of worry or obligation. I was simply happy to see Sam thriving. On moving day, as I helped carry a few boxes into their new apartment, I took a moment to step back and look at them. Sam and Laura laughing, teasing each other as they unpacked. For the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of calm. Sam was going to be okay. He'd found his footing, and he'd found someone who truly cared for him. As a mother, what more could I ask for? The weeks after the move flew by. They invited me over for dinner in their new home, and I marveled at how they'd turned the small space into something warm and inviting. Laura had an eye for decorating, and Sam's paintings hung on the walls, giving the apartment a personal touch. We ate, laughed, and shared stories about the past, the kind of light, easy conversation that reminded me how far we'd come. "Mom," Sam said after dinner, "I just want to thank you for everything. You've always been there for me, even when I didn't know how to ask for help." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You don't have to thank me, Sam. It's what mothers do. But seeing you happy now, that's the best thanks I could ever get." Laura nodded in agreement. "You've been such an important part of Sam's life. I'm really grateful to have you in ours." The moment filled me with a quiet joy. This was what I'd hoped for all along, not just for Sam to find love again, but for him to find himself. He'd gone through a lot, but he'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more open to the possibilities of life. As I left their apartment that evening, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. Life would never be without challenges, but we'd learned how to face them together. Sam was building a life that he could be proud of, and I was building one of my own. We were both moving forward, side by side, and that was more than enough.